Here's my honest and comprehensive Beats Studio Pro review and whether they're worth it in 2025. For context, I'm going to be comparing the Beats Studio Pro against its most popular competition, such as versus the previous Beats Studio 3 wireless, versus the Apple AirPods Max, Bose QuietComfort 2023, Sony WH-1000XM5, and Sony XM4. Hey there, OD from recordingnow.com. We're on a mission to create the most comprehensive database of honest, unbiased headphone and wireless earbud reviews, comparisons, and overall rankings to help you make a more informed purchase and get the best value for your money. Did you know that you can save up to $100 or more by shopping for any of these headphones in renewed or used condition? We'll have links to where you can save money in the description and in a pinned comment below. You can also visit recordingnow.com or Google Recording Now to see any of our content or search up a specific model or comparison. If you're new here, I'm going to go over every single category with the Beats Studio Pro and give an objective score so you can compare these against any of the headphones I mentioned. So starting with comfort, I'd say this is really the Achilles heel of these headphones. Although not much has changed since the previous Beats Studio 3 wireless, my biggest issue with the Beats Studio Pro is its clamping force. Now, I used the Beats Studio 3 wireless for a long time exclusively as a gym headphone, and as you can see here, the ear cups have really worn down, although these are replaceable. The headphone itself is unbroken and still works today. With the Beats Studio Pro, what I like is that they did improve the memory foam of the ear pad material, but this headband is very skinny with very little cushioning, and it just feels like a strip of rubber basically. That said, because the headband is so wide, it actually distributes the weight evenly, and I don't feel that much top of head pressure as I should be, versus something like the Sony XM5, which has a really skinny headband that can create some pinpoint top of head pressure. Now, my biggest issue by far is the clamping force of these headphones, which has loosened up a little bit since they were brand new, but to be honest, compared to all of the headphones I had mentioned in the intro, these are the strongest clamping force, and you truly do feel it. Also, there's not a ton of interior space inside of the ear cup, so my ears really press against the fabric. This is actually quite similar to the Sony XM5, but other headphones such as the Bose QuietComfort have a lot more interior space, so my ears are a lot more free inside of the ear cup. So the end result is you do feel that clamping force and that lack of space, which makes these feel a little claustrophobic. These weighed in at 268 grams on my scale, which is not the lightest, but also not the heaviest, so about average. So overall for comfort, I'm giving these a 3.5 out of 5, which is actually one of the lowest scores in this class of headphones. Now, moving on to the category of features, build quality, battery life, and noise canceling performance. So for features, I actually wanted to highlight the Apple AirPods Max because the Beats brand, being an Apple product, technically, the Beats Studio Pro on paper actually shares a lot of pretty much the same exact features as the more expensive AirPods Max. The Beats Studio Pro is around 3 years newer than the AirPods Max and features similar features like the personalized spatial audio and Dolby Atmos support. You also have your typical modern features like multiple microphones for taking phone calls. You can choose between active noise canceling, transparency mode, or turning it off completely. And one of my favorite standout features of the Apple headphones is that seamless connectivity if you're inside of the Apple ecosystem. For example, if you have more than 2 devices, let's say a Mac, an iPhone, and iPad, these headphones have no problem switching between any of the devices you're currently focused on without even having to turn something on in the settings. Whereas pretty much all of these other non-Apple headphones can only connect to 2 devices at a time, and you're going to have to switch it out using the companion app for each, which can be a hassle. Now, what you're going to get with the Beats Studio Pro is a soft shell case here that does include your charging cable and a stereo cable. What I love about the Beats Studio Pro is the ability to collapse and fold them. This ends up being pretty much the most compact solution as far as a Bluetooth active noise canceling headphone today. Moving on to build quality. Now, this is something where it actually feels quite flimsy when you're just kind of moving the headphone around. You have this plastic on the exterior, although you do see the metal underneath the headband here and in the hinges. But overall, when you're handling them, they do feel kind of cheap. So I bring in the older Studio 3 wireless to just show you that despite feeling cheap, these headphones can actually take a pretty good beating and last a really, really long time because I exclusively use these as a gym headphone, sometimes for traveling. And you can see that the only damage is in the ear pads, which is completely replaceable. And to be honest, for how much I sweat in in these actually lasted quite longer than I was expecting. That said, these don't feel as premium or sturdy as something like the much more expensive Apple AirPods Max, which features stainless steel and aluminum, and something like the Bose QuietComfort 2023. When you're, moving the hinges and you're handling these, you don't really hear as much creaks and rattles. Okay, so moving on to battery life, these actually have one of the more impressive ratings of 40 hours of battery life on a single charge. The only headphone on my desk that has a longer battery life is the Sennheiser Momentum 4, which is rated at 60 hours, the top of this class. Something like the AirPods Max only has 20 hours, so half the battery life on a single charge. Now moving on to the Beats Studio Pro noise canceling performance, I was a bit skeptical coming in just because the price of these is a lot less than most of its competitors, but I was pleasantly surprised that the noise canceling is actually decently effective, although I would put it below the tiers of Sony and Bose at the top, and I would also put it a little bit below the Apple AirPods Max and the Sennheiser Momentum 4, which is roughly around the same tier. That said, the noise canceling is completely serviceable. Just include the noise canceling and the transparency modes, and to have them be decent, I think is good enough, except for those who really truly prioritize that active noise canceling. So overall for this category, I'm giving the Beats Studio Pro a 4.5 out of 5 due to that pretty long battery life, having decent noise canceling, but also sharing pretty much all of the same features as the much more expensive Apple AirPods Max and being an Apple product under the hood. So moving on to sound quality, I'd like to compare it first against the Beats Studio 3. The Studio Pro really improved upon the Studio 3, which was really kind of a flat headphone. It was honestly kind of bland and boring to listen to, whereas the Studio Pro kind of returns to the roots of Beats, which is supposed to be a very consumer-friendly, fun headphone that is focused more on the bass and the treble. The Beats Studio 3 really had lackluster sound quality with a poor sub-bass response and audible distortion. Now, Apple improved greatly with the Studio Pro by even mentioning in their marketing material that they have near zero distortion at high volume, an improvement of up to 80% compared to the Beats Studio 3 distortion issue. Alright, so how do these sound and how do they stack up against all of the competition today? So my overall impression of these is that they sound probably a lot better than people are expecting. These are actually one of the most detailed headphones in the treble versus all of the competition that you've seen today. That said, they have a fairly thin overall sound that is lacking in the bass. It doesn't have that satisfying bass, slam, and impact that I would expect from something with the Beats brand name. Headphones like the Momentum 4 and the Bose QuietComfort 2023 have much more bass slam and flat out are just more fun to listen to. Now, they did improve the bass of the Studio Pro over the previous Studio 3, which is really flat, but to be honest, I think they could have emphasized this even more because overall, when I'm listening to these back to back, they sound rather thin. Now, some of the positives of these headphones is that super detailed and treble forward sound. I feel that starting with the Studio 3 and now moving on to the Studio Pro, that Apple is really respecting the studio portion of the name, and these are a lot more neutral than people probably expect from the old Beats back in the day. Now, overall, I do enjoy listening to these because they have tons of detail, but overall, these are lacking as an audiophile headphone when we're talking about the soundstage, the depth. Not only do these feel claustrophobic as far as the ear cups and the clamping force, but the sound is also really in your face, which can work for some genres, but overall can get a little fatiguing. In kind of an ironic way, I think the Studio Pro might actually excel for genres that don't really have a ton of bass, like listening to classical or jazz, as opposed to listening to modern music, which other headphones just have so much more slam. Now, just to pull in a couple competitors, the AirPods Max is a much higher quality sounding audiophile headphone stock. I would put the Studio Pro in a complete tier below the AirPods Max for sound quality. Comparing it against the Sony XM5 is kind of interesting because the XM5 out of the box actually sounds really underwhelming until I apply my custom EQ settings, which really brings out a bit more sound quality in these. I would say the XM5 with that EQ is slightly better than the Beats Studio Pro. Now, one shocking headphone is the Bose QuietComfort 2023, which I think does a better job than the Beats Studio Pro of being a consumer-friendly headphone with a really satisfying bass slam, and just overall being a closer to audiophile headphone than the Studio Pro. Lastly, I forgot to bring in the Bose QuietComfort Ultra, but this is actually one of the most audiophile headphones today with my custom EQ setting that brings out a lot of the detail that's hidden underneath the stock tuning. I would say headphones like the Bose QuietComfort Ultra, the AirPods Max, and the Sennheiser Momentum 4 are just in a completely different tier above the Beats Studio Pro. I would say something like the previous generation Sony XM4 is closer to the sound quality. I also have a custom EQ setting I just updated on the website for the XM4 that really brings out its potential, and I'd rate them at roughly around the same amount of sound quality. So with that said, the overall sound quality score for the Beats Studio Pro is going to be a 7.9 out of 10. Okay, so let's talk about value. This is probably the most intriguing part of these headphones for me because lately I've been seeing these on sale for $180. Now, the full retail price for the Beats Studio Pro is just under $350, which is a price that I personally would just not pay for these headphones. What makes things interesting is the fact that I could typically find these on sale for between $180 to $200 brand new today. At $180, these would be like a third of the price of the Apple AirPods Max, and on paper, the Studio Pro is more or less 80% of the Apple AirPods Max at a fraction of the price. When we're looking at the current market price of these headphones, two standouts to me are the Momentum 4, which is typically under $300, and the Bose QuietComfort 2023, which can be found for around $249. Those are still a pretty far cry from $180 brand new for the Beats Studio Pro, and if you look renewed or used, that price drops even further. So overall, I'm giving the Studio Pro a very strong 4.5 out of 5 on account that it's pretty much the cheapest brand new headphone versus any of the headphones I just mentioned in this video. So overall, the Beats Studio Pro receives an 8.2 out of 10. If you're able to find these for around $180 brand new, I think that that is probably the strongest argument for these headphones because they don't particularly score well when it comes to sound quality. They're in the tier below the more expensive flagship headphones, but they're very competitive with headphones like the Sony XM4. They're a big improvement over the previous generation Studio 3 wireless, but I think that the comfort is also what's holding these back because these have the potential to be pretty comfortable if that clamping force just wasn't the strongest that I felt in this class of headphones. Because on paper, the features of this being an Apple product under the hood, having that personalized spatial audio with Dolby Atmos, having the noise canceling, which is decent, you're getting all of that for a fraction of the price of the Apple AirPods Max, which I think is the main selling point of these headphones. Again, if you want to save up to $100 or more by shopping for these headphones, either new, renewed, or used, there's going to be links to everything in the video description and in a pinned comment below. If you'd like to see head-to-head comparisons or the rest of our reviews, visit recordingnow.com or Google Recording Now. If you have any questions about any of these headphones and need help making a decision on which one is right for you, leave in the comments and I try to get back to everyone as much as I can. If you found this video useful, hit the thumbs up button and comment below. Your support really helps the channel. And lastly, if you love audio, hit the subscribe button and hit the notification bell because we're going to be releasing a ton more content this year. Let me know if there's any models that you'd like to see reviewed next or any comparisons that we haven't covered yet. Thanks for watching and happy listening.